My name is Jessica Monroe. I'm 31 years old, and I used to think nothing could break my heart more than betrayal in love. Until I received a lawsuit letter from my own parents. They didn't ask how I was doing, if I was happy. They simply wrote, "Transfer the house to your brother, or we'll see you in court." The house I saved for over 15 years, the first home in my life that I could unlock with a key of my own. I had never done anything wrong to them, except succeed without asking anyone for a dime. And that was when they decided to destroy everything. Have you ever had your own family exploit what you spent your youth building? Leave a comment if you've ever been in a similar situation. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned. Because I'm about to tell you my true story, and the comeback they never saw coming. My name is Jessica Monroe, and maybe I grew up a little too early. Only no one in my family noticed. I learned to cook dinner by 13 after my mother said, "You're a big girl now, you should help out." I learned how to take the bus from the suburbs to Ren's Cafe to work weekend shifts, while my younger brother, Kyle, still got dropped off by mom in a brand new SUV. At 14, I got my first job. Kitchen helper at a highway burger joint. $6.25 an hour. Not enough to do anything big, but I split it 3 ways: savings, school lunch, and the rest for used books. Kyle never had to worry about any of that. He had his own room with a flat-screen TV, an electric piano, a new laptop for composing music. "He's gifted," my mother often said. "You have to understand, he's a boy. He needs direction and opportunity." Opportunity. I used to think I had one too, when I got a full scholarship to a state university. I remember the day I held the red envelope, running down to the living room with tears in my eyes. I got in, and I got a scholarship too. My dad didn't even look up from the TV. My mom flipped through the award letter and said, "You need to file FAFSA, right?" I nodded. "I need your signatures." "No," my dad snapped. "We're not putting our financial info in a government system. Go to a cheaper school." I said nothing. That scholarship faded like it never existed. I wasn't allowed to sign it myself. And Kyle? He was sent to a private music academy in New York the very next year. Tuition, over $20,000 per semester. Talent needs to be nurtured, my mom told the relatives like it was a given. No, I enrolled at a community college, took night classes, worked during the day. Sometimes I passed out at my desk after closing shifts at the grocery store. While friends posted graduation photos, I was scrubbing toner off a printer in the accounting office. Kyle failed twice trying to open a recording studio. Once due to a scamming partner, according to my mom. Once because he was still short on startup funds. Both times, my parents co-signed business loans. Over $60,000 in total. Me? I was denied a $3,000 loan to replace a laptop that wouldn't even start. "You don't need something fancy for that boring degree," my dad said when I brought it up. "Besides, Kyle needs better gear for his mixing." I never asked for anything again after that, but I kept records, every single one. I had a denim-covered notebook. Inside was a list of every expense since I was 15. I wrote down everything: tip money from each shift, textbook prices, utility bills, every tuition transfer. I even wrote down what my mom said when I skipped the holidays to save on gas. "This isn't living, Jess." That quote, I wrote in red ink, underlined 3 times. Once, Kyle dropped his phone in the toilet. My mom got him the latest iPhone the next day. I used a flip phone until I was 26. Because there's no point wasting money on looks. What I really wanted wasn't a phone, or a laptop, or a proper education. I wanted to be seen, not with pity, or with that weary sigh that says she knows how to take care of herself. I wanted to be recognized as part of the family, not the shadow next to the gifted one, Kyle. But that never happened, and I got used to taking care of myself as a survival instinct, not a choice. I started working at a commercial bank when I was 23. Slow promotions, but steady. I bought my house without a loan. Paid for school on my own, never asked my parents for a thing. Even the last birthday gift they gave me was a mattress coupon, valid only if I spent at least $500. They always said Kyle could do great things if he got a little more support. That great thing turned out to be piles of debt, multiple personal bankruptcy filings, and a fiancé with cold eyes hidden behind stage-thick mascara. But when I said no to the plan they had laid out, they called me selfish, a traitor to the family, an ungrateful daughter. And me? I wanted to keep the small house with beige walls that I picked out myself. A house with not much furniture, but the only thing that ever truly belonged to me. I didn't know they were prepared enough to hire an attorney, send an official lawsuit, and slap on an express priority stamp. All to reclaim something I built alone. But now I understand. It wasn't the house they wanted. They wanted me to keep playing the background role in their script. The obedient daughter. Quiet, always stepping aside for her brother. Saturday afternoon, I had just finished making a glass of iced tea when I heard a car pulling into the driveway. A glossy white SUV stopped right at the edge of the steps. The car door opened, and I knew instantly this wasn't a social visit. My father stepped out first, wearing a white dress shirt so crisply ironed it looked like it came straight from the dry cleaner. My mother followed, holding a box of pastries from the bakery she always called a peace offering. But what made me freeze was the person who stepped out of the back seat. Kyle. His hair was still messy like always, but this time it was styled, linen shirt, chinos, and a forced smile that couldn't hide his awkwardness. And then, a young woman stepped out from the other side. She wore flats and a pale floral maxi dress. Her hand rested on her belly, which appeared to be pregnant. I had never met her before. "Jessica, this is Carly," my mom said quickly, as if introducing an old friend. "Kyle's fiancé, and as you can see, it's coming soon." Carly gave a small smile, her hand gently stroking her belly. But I had learned to observe. The first thing I noticed wasn't her expression. It was that belly didn't move at all, even as she walked. It sat there, unnaturally still. I opened the door, pausing for a second before stepping aside. "Come in." They sat around my dining table like they owned the place. Mom placed the pastry box on the table, then sighed. "You already know why we're here." Dad spoke. His voice was low, cold, the same tone I'd heard when he used to fire employees at the firm. "Kyle's about to become a father. He needs a stable environment. And you? You're independent, you have a good job. We think you could be a little flexible." I looked at Kyle. He lowered his head, unable to meet my eyes. "So, what exactly are you saying?" I kept my voice calm. "You want me to move out of my own house?" Aunt Heather, who had been silent the whole time, finally spoke. "You could stay at my mobile home for now. There's still an empty room." My daughter moved out. For how long? 9 months? 2 years? Or forever? No one answered. Carly sat still, one hand stroking the maxi dress that covered her fake belly. I leaned back, eyes locked on my father. "This house is in my name, bought with my money. None of you paid even a cent." "Jessica, don't speak so heartlessly," my mom interjected. "Families should look out for one another." I turned to her. "Then why didn't you look out for me when you refused to sign the FAFSA and made me lose my scholarship? Or when you co-signed loans, twice, for Kyle's studios?" Kyle shifted in his seat. Carly finally spoke for the first time, her voice soft. "I know this is uncomfortable for you. I just want our baby to have a proper home, not a cramped little rental anymore." "Then maybe you should get a job, Carly." My mother's eyes sharpened. "Jessica, don't be so cold. Carly's pregnant. You can't understand the sacrifice a mother makes." "Oh, I understand sacrifice very well." I worked 3 jobs to pay for school. I lived in an apartment with a leaking ceiling, eating instant noodles every night. And Carly? I glanced at her belly. She doesn't even know how to strap on a fake pregnancy belly properly. A heavy silence filled the room. Carly turned pale. My father slammed his hand on the table. That's enough. We came here to negotiate. If you won't transfer the house willingly, we'll have to go another route. What route? I asked plainly. Legal, he said. Family property can be contested in court if there's evidence of parental investment. So this family visit was really just a strategy meeting to prep a lawsuit against me? Mom looked away. Aunt Heather lowered her head. Carly stood, gently cradling her belly like it was some detached prop. And Kyle, finally, said just one thing. I really need this house, Jess. You can live anywhere. But I really need you all to leave. Now. No one said a word after that. One by one they stood, not a single one of them looking me in the eye as they walked out the door. 2 days later, I woke up in the middle of the night to my phone ringing. A message from Kayla, my old college classmate, now living in Florida. Jess? What's going on? Did you really kick Kyle and his pregnant fiancée out of your house? I jolted upright, heart racing. I opened Facebook. Kyle's post was at the top of the feed. Hundreds of shares, thousands of angry reactions. His profile picture was of Carly, cradling her belly and staring out the window with theatrical sadness. The caption read, "My sister just threw us out of her home knowing my wife is pregnant. That house was once my mother's dream. All we asked for was a roof over our child's head, but she said, 'Leave, this is my house.' The price of success is losing your humanity." Ooh, the comments kept piling in by the minute. This made my blood boil. Treating your own blood like that? Praying the baby ends up in a better family than this. What's the point of getting rich if you lose your heart? Those words didn't bruise my pride. They pierced the child inside me. The one who once believed that if she was good, tried hard, stayed quiet, and behaved, her family would love her. The next morning, when I walked into the office, my assistant Nora greeted me with a nervous look. "Jess, the boss wants to see you." The meeting room was nearly empty. Only Lucinda, the VP of HR, and Ryan, my direct manager, were there. He began slowly. "We received an anonymous email last night. It mentioned some personal matters. Specifically that you were treated for depression at 19 with signs of self-harm and 1 hospitalization." I felt the blood rush to my ears. "We have no right to investigate your private life," Lucinda added. "But since this is a financial firm and it touches on reliability and stress response, we recommend you take a leave of absence, maybe a few weeks to stabilize." "This isn't a suspension," Ryan said quietly. "Just temporary." "Temporary because someone sent a made-up email about my past?" Lucinda said nothing. Ryan stared down at his clasped hands. "I see." That afternoon, I drove home, turned off my phone, closed the curtains, and sat alone on the couch by the window, where morning light usually poured in. I looked up at the photo of me and Grandpa at my community college graduation party. I was 19, beaming in a borrowed black dress. Grandpa's hand rested on my shoulder. He was the only one in the family who came that day. I walked into the study, pulled out my old notebook from the drawer, the one I used to track expenses and things I'd never forget. Right underneath, I added a new line. "If they choose the law, I'll choose the truth." I opened my laptop, typed into Google, "Civil asset attorney, family dispute specialist." The first page was filled with big-name law firms. Consultation fees started at $800 and up. I didn't have that kind of budget. But I had a name, Elijah Ward. A former student of mine. He took my financial literacy class at the local women's center 2 years ago. Smart, sharp, but fresh out of law school back then. I'd helped him revise his first resume. I found the small website he had built himself. One line stood out. "I believe the law should serve justice especially when justice is distorted by bloodlines. I hit send on a message. I need a lawyer. But more than that, I need to believe I'm not crazy for defending what I built on my own. 3 hours later, Elijah called. Jessica, I remember you. If you're willing to tell the whole story, I'm ready to listen. One Tuesday morning, I was sitting at my dining table sketching out the financial ties in my family to prepare for a call with Elijah when I heard an old truck pull into the yard. I recognized that engine immediately. The faded green Ford, its paint worn thin by time. The same truck my grandfather had driven since I was a child. Mr. Howard Monroe, 82 years old, stepped down slowly but steadily. He was carrying something, a small metal chest covered in a light layer of dust, the latch still streaked with chipped silver paint. I opened the door. "You're here early, Grandpa." "Couldn't sleep," he replied, voice raspy. "I've got something to give you." We settled into the living room. He placed the chest on the table, unlocking it with a thin key the color of his hair. Inside were things no one thought still existed. A faded brown savings book, a bundle of handwritten letters tied with string, and a handwritten copy of my grandmother's will, Eleanor Monroe. I touched the thin paper, the round, familiar handwriting. I'd seen her sign Christmas cards with it. "How long have you kept this?" I asked softly. "She gave it to me before she passed," he said. "Said if the day ever came when her girl was hurt by her own family, I should give it back." I turned to the last page. My chest tightened. Eleanor Monroe, leave the sum of $42,000 in a savings account at First Legacy Bank to my granddaughter, Jessica Monroe, to be used for college tuition. I want her to receive the education she'll never dare to ask for. Beside it was the bank's verification seal, account opened in June when Jessica was 12. I flipped through the savings book. The withdrawals were gradual, 5,000, then 8, then the entire balance. Exactly 1 week after I lost my scholarship due to missing the FAFSA form, the signature on the final withdrawal, Thomas Monroe. My father. I don't remember how I breathed in the minutes that followed, only that Grandpa placed a hand on my shoulder, slow and steady. "Your grandma knew you'd find out one day, and she believed, when that time came, you'd know what to do." That day's meeting with Elijah lasted nearly 3 hours. He showed up with a backpack and a small leather notebook. "I've reviewed the lawsuit briefly," Elijah said as we sat at the table, papers spread everywhere. "But what you have here is a case of financial fraud. This goes beyond civil dispute." I slid the letters and the copy of the will toward him. Elijah was quiet for a long moment. "Do you have the original?" "No, just this copy my grandfather kept. But it's enough to request a bank file retrieval if needed. I can file a motion to subpoena account records, match withdrawal signatures. If your father withdrew it as guardian but can't prove use for your benefit, that's fraud. Add in the fact he used it to fund someone else, Kyle, and we've got a strong countersuit." I clenched my fists. "And then there's Carly. I know someone in the DA's office. We can check medical records and insurance activity. If she's using a fake pregnancy belly and there's no prenatal record, then this is a deliberate scam." Elijah opened his laptop. "You once taught me how to build budget spreadsheets to show the power of data. Now it's my turn to show you how the law brings truth to light." That night, I sat alone by the window, desk lamp shining on the bank statements, Grandma's letter, photos of the savings book. Every little thing I once dismissed as small, each saved dollar, every broken promise, every sign I was overlooked, had led me here. I picked up my phone and texted Elijah. "Tomorrow, I want to start reopening the estate file. Can you help me write the petition?" Petition writing is for the lawyer. You just tell the truth, exactly as it happened. I'll take care of the rest. A week after that first meeting with Elijah, I got a call on Monday morning. While carefully filing copies of the will and financial statements into the blue folder I used just for this case. "Jess," Elijah said, voice tense but controlled. We got the private investigator's report. Are you sure you want to hear it now? I set the folder down and stood. Go ahead. First, Carly, the woman Kyle calls his pregnant fiancé. She's not pregnant. And worse, she pulled the same stunt 3 years ago in Illinois. I sat, gripping the armrest tightly. She ordered a fake pregnancy belly off Amazon, the realistic silicone baby bump, size large. The investigator found the purchase history and the confirmation messages. What about the guys she scammed back then? I asked. A carpenter named Frank. She promised him a baby, then insisted on being added as co-owner on the house he was building. When he got suspicious, she vanished overnight. Left the belly in the trash. I closed my eyes. It felt like layers of old skin were being stripped away, exposing a raw, icy truth. Elijah, did Kyle know? He did. Not only knew, he orchestrated the whole thing. There's security footage of them rehearsing the scene in the parking lot of an old church. Anything else? He answered slowly. You might want to sit tight. Kyle was the one who stole your credit card 3 years ago. That time you thought someone skimmed it at the gas station? You think I forgot? I remembered it perfectly. It took me nearly 3 months to fix the issue with the bank, restore my credit, and cut every personal expense for the next 6 months. Any proof? I asked. The investigator traced the IP address used for the orders back to Kyle's rental house in Asheville. All shipments were delivered to a mailbox under the name K. Monroe, and surveillance caught Kyle picking up the packages. Part of me had always wanted to believe that Kyle was simply weak, blinded by poor choices. But it turned out he wasn't just weak. He was calculating. Elijah, what about who Carly really is? We ran a deeper background check. Carly's birth name is Carly Heather Nash. Elijah. Nash is Aunt Heather's last name. Exactly. Carly is Heather's biological daughter, from a previous relationship with a man prosecuted for credit fraud in 1999. I froze, like I'd taken a punch to the gut. Elijah, does that mean Kyle and Carly are related? First cousins. By legal definition, they share bloodline. And under North Carolina law, if they filed a marriage certificate, it could be voided due to falsified information. A wave of disgust mixed with something deeper, grief, rose inside me. I didn't understand what they were thinking. Or rather, they had never thought of anyone but themselves. Elijah, is this enough to sue? He answered quickly. More than enough. This qualifies for a full countersuit. Attempted asset seizure and coordinated fraud. Then let's begin. The following day, Elijah and I met at a small cafe tucked behind the county courthouse. His hand moved quickly across the documents as he took notes. Elijah, I asked, do you think the court will consider this criminal? If we can prove collusion between all three, Kyle, Carly, and Heather, with the intent to seize real estate and defame you into surrendering property, then yes. This fits the criteria for criminal fraud. And Carly? Given her previous fraud in another state, we can file to reopen her case history. But for now, we launch a civil countersuit and simultaneously request a parallel criminal investigation. Elijah paused, then turned his eyes to me. Are you sure you want to go through with this? If this gets out, the media could pick it up. Your family won't just lose face. They could lose their freedom. I looked out the cafe window, where the morning sun lit up rows of wooden tables and green-painted metal chairs. I didn't start this, but if they want to paint me as the traitor, then I'll be the traitor holding every piece of proof. That morning, I arrived at the courthouse an hour early. I settled alone on the long wooden bench, the case box balanced on my lap. The slim metal box was color-coded. Blue for finances, red for family records, yellow for digital evidence, gray for handwritten letters and the will. I'd organized everything for weeks, not to convince them, but to remind myself. I hadn't imagined any of it. Every scar had a trace, and if preserved carefully enough, every wound would find its voice. Footsteps echoed down the marble hallway. I didn't need to turn around to know it was them. My family. Or at least, the people who used to hold that title. My mother walked in first, wearing a white blouse with lace trim and a cream silk scarf around her wrist. My father followed, dressed in the same charcoal suit he wore to business forums. Kyle walked beside them, face clean-shaven, hair slicked back, trying to look composed but failing to hide the tension in his jaw. And Carly? Wearing a body-hugging, ankle-length dress, her hand resting gently on her stomach like she was cradling the holiest thing on earth. Her belly was still round as ever, but I knew exactly what lay beneath that fabric. Silicone. What almost made me laugh was that they were all wearing white jackets printed in bold red letters, "Family First," right across the chest. A slogan. A shiny coat over a rotting frame. And me? I wore a dark navy blazer, high-collar blouse, hair tied back neatly. No slogans. Just carefully prepared silence. Court began at 8:30. Judge Peterson, a woman in her 60s, entered. "We are hearing the case of Monroe versus Monroe." Their attorney, Mitch Landon, stepped forward. A familiar face from highway billboards. Fighting for family rights. A seasoned performer. "Your Honor," he began, voice sonorous, "this is not merely a property case. It is a cry for help from a broken family. My clients, Thomas and Linda Monroe, raised 2 children. They invested time, money, and heart into protecting their family. I didn't blink. And now, with their son Kyle preparing for fatherhood, all they ask is what any family would want: a home. To continue the circle of love." I glanced left. Kyle lowered his head, feigning emotion. Their daughter, Jessica Monroe, refuses to share that space, even though that property was built largely with the support of both Mr. and Mrs. Monroe. Mitch continued, stressing the word support, like a moral weight on my shoulders. Then it was my turn. "Elijah is not yet a licensed litigator," I addressed the judge, "so I will represent myself today. And, Your Honor, I have specific evidence to counter every point made." I opened my case box and pulled out the original bank statements. Certified copies included. This property, located at 817 Garden Crest, was purchased with personal savings accumulated over 15 years. No transfers or financial support from Mr. or Mrs. Monroe. I flipped to the next file. My grandmother's savings account. Eleanor Monroe. It states clearly, "Tuition funds reserved for me, withdrawn without consent by Thomas Monroe when I was 17. I noticed subtle movement on the other bench. My father looked directly at me, but his stare was hollow. I proceed with identity theft evidence. My credit card, stolen in 2020. The purchase history matches Kyle Monroe's address. Security camera footage confirms the package retrieval. I held up another document. An email Carly once sent to a man named Frank 3 years ago. She wrote, "Just trust me. In a few months, our baby will be here." Attached was a photo of the same fake belly she wore in court. Finally, I plugged my tablet into the projector. The screen displayed surveillance footage from Walgreens. Carly entering the restroom, removing the fake bump, stuffing it into her tote, adjusting her dress, and exiting like nothing had happened. The entire courtroom fell silent. From the back row, Elijah stood and handed the court clerk a file. Motion to open a criminal investigation for conspiracy to commit fraud, identity falsification, and attempted asset theft. Judge Peterson tapped her gavel, voice steady but cold. The plaintiffs have failed to provide legal proof of entitlement to the contested property. The defendant has presented sufficient documentation establishing lawful ownership, and the court finds grounds for criminal investigation involving the plaintiffs and associated individuals. The request to initiate investigation into Kyle Monroe and Carly Nash is hereby granted. I kept my back to them. I only heard the scrape of chairs, the rustle of matching jackets. Someone in the gallery let out a faint gasp, and in that moment, I knew. I was the only one in that room who knew her truth and had the courage to lay it bare before the law. Less than 3 days after the hearing, my name, Kyle's, and Carly's appeared on the front page of the Asheville Gazette beneath the headline, "Property Battle Shocks Court. Daughter Wins Case Against Parents. Truth About Unborn Grandchild Stuns Judge." The article didn't use sensational words. It simply listed the facts. The evidence I submitted, the Walgreens video, credit card history, a copy of my grandmother's will, and the official statement from the district attorney's office announcing the criminal investigation into Kyle Monroe and Carly Nash for fraud and attempted property seizure. That night, I put my phone on silent. Messages kept flooding in, some from old acquaintances apologizing for once believing Kyle's Facebook post. Some simply said one word, proud. But the message that made me pause the longest came from someone I never expected. Sabrina, my cousin who always played neutral at family gatherings, the one who once called me too rigid to be approachable. You did something I never had the courage to do. Heather once held on to all my college funds because she didn't trust I'd spend them wisely. I stayed quiet because I thought it was small. But it wasn't. It was the start of a long chain of silence that hasn't ended until now. On Monday morning, I went to the county office. Elijah came with me. We filed for a long-term restraining order against Kyle and Carly. Attached were court documents, the verdict, and screenshots of Kyle's vague, threatening messages posted after he lost the case. "Are you sure?" Elijah asked as I signed the final form. "I'm sure," I said. "I don't want revenge, but I also won't let them return to my life like nothing ever happened." 3 days later, I was watering plants in the backyard when I heard a knock at the door. Maple, the little rescue dog I adopted, ran ahead. She barked softly, not aggressively, just alert. I rounded the house, and there, on the front porch, stood my mother. She wore the gray cardigan I'd once bought her for Christmas when I was 25, the only time she ever wore it. Her eyes were red. In her hand was a paper bag from my favorite bakery, the one she only visited once a year, on my birthday. "Jessica," she began, her voice trembling. I just want to talk." I stood still, holding the garden hose. "I didn't know it would go this far," she continued. "Everything spun out. I couldn't control it. I thought, if Kyle had the house, if you could maybe give in a little." I cut her off. "You call sacrificing an entire life giving in a little? Family doesn't use lawyers to take each other's work. Family doesn't hire investigators to smear one another, spread false stories, fake pregnancies to force someone into surrender." "I know," she whispered, voice breaking. "I know I was wrong." I looked into her eyes. There was something in them, not quite regret. Maybe the fear of losing what she thought she always controlled. "You can be my mother again," I said slowly, "when you truly understand that I'm no longer the obedient daughter, willing to sacrifice for a family that doesn't value the truth." I stepped back inside, not slamming the door, but firmly. She didn't knock again. The bag of pastries stayed on the porch until evening. Then I placed it in the fridge. Not because I forgave her, but because I didn't need to do anything more to prove I was right. Some things are best kept as the final proof of where kindness ends. 3 weeks after the trial ended, my life didn't return to what it was. It became something else, something quieter, clearer, and deeper than anything I'd lived before. I started offering a free financial literacy class every Thursday evening at the public library, just 4 blocks from my house. A small room that smelled of old paper and hummed with the soft buzz of the air conditioner was packed with women of all ages. A newly divorced receptionist, a single mother of 2, a middle-aged woman who'd discovered her husband had been hiding debt for decades. I walked into that first class holding a stack of printed handouts, my heart beating fast. But when I saw their eyes, eyes that had wandered through the same kind of darkness I once stood in. I knew I was meant to be here. Elijah had helped me print all the materials. He even designed a monthly expense tracker in Google Sheets, which he jokingly called the ultimate weapon against financial manipulation. Each night, he'd stop by at the end of class with coffee or muffins. "Anyone ask about prenuptial negotiation tonight?" he'd say as he handed me a latte. I laughed. Yes, and you know what? There was a 22-year-old girl. She asked about it like it was the most natural thing to do. Then, things are starting to change. On weekends, my grandfather, Howard Monroe, came by early in the morning, carrying reclaimed wood from his old garage. We started building a long dining table for the back porch, beneath the maple tree I'd planted from a cutting when I was 26. "How long will this table be, Grandpa?" I asked, wiping sweat from my forehead. "Long enough for 12, he answered, measuring each plank with a worn wooden ruler. "Enough that no one gets pushed to the edge." "Is this the table Grandma used to talk about?" she said. "If you don't have enough space, build more, but never shrink yourself to fit someone else's table." We sawed, sanded, and bolted each piece with steel screws. Every knock, every scratch, every uneven groove felt like rebuilding the layers of skin stripped away in past months. One Saturday afternoon, while I was applying a coat of oil to the tabletop, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find a line of neighbors standing on the porch, holding pies, lasagna pans, potato salad, and honest smiles. "We figured," said Mrs. Henderson, 2 houses down to the south, "that it's time you knew. This neighborhood doesn't believe what they used to say about you." A young woman I hadn't met added, "I just moved here recently, but everyone says you're the one who stood up for the truth." I admire that. I invited them into the backyard, where the wood table still smelled of fresh oil. Plates of food landed on the rough planks, kids ran circles around the maple tree, and Maple lay curled at the foot of the table like she was guarding a piece still in bloom. As the sun dipped low, casting a golden hue across the yard, I leaned on the railing with a glass of iced tea in hand, watching unfamiliar yet warm faces talking, laughing, checking in on one another like old friends. No one mentioned Kyle. No one asked about Carly. No one needed to. Because some things don't need to be told again. They've turned into soil. And from there, something new begins to grow. Late that evening, Elijah stayed to help me wash the dishes. "This table needs 2 more chairs," he said, sliding a chair to the edge. "Why?" "Because someone's always going to arrive late. Or someone might show up who never thought they'd be invited." I looked around. The golden kitchen light reflecting off polished wood, a dining table, a gathering, an open circle. Not formed by blood, but by chosen kindness. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight, I knew this much. I had begun to rebuild. Not from what others left behind, but from the very place they once tried to tear down. 1 year after the trial, my house was no longer a place of retreat, defense, or hiding. It had become a place people walked into and stayed. Every Sunday, the backyard lit up by mid-afternoon. Potluck Sundays. Small, steady gatherings where each person brought a dish, a story, or simply a smile for no reason at all. Today, Mrs. Chen from across the street brought her signature steamed egg custard, which she only made for someone living in truth. Thomas, a former colleague who now lived nearby, stood grilling by the charcoal pit. Sarah, who once helped me print hundreds of pages for the lawsuit, was crafting paper cards under the maple tree with 3 kids. At the center of the long wood table sat a photo of my grandmother, Eleanor Monroe, wearing her old floral dress, smiling quietly next to a homemade birthday cake. Beside it was a wooden plaque I'd carved by hand. "As you build yourself, no one has the right to take." Everyone around that table had lost something. Money, freedom, sometimes even their name in a family. But today, they sat here as if the world still had space for those who refused to surrender. I didn't retell the trial. No one asked for details. But everyone understood, in the way only those who've been hurt can understand. Peace doesn't come from defeating someone. It comes from no longer being controlled by them. In the kitchen, I checked the oven. My phone buzzed softly in my pocket. A message from Sabrina, my cousin who'd stayed silent through most of what I faced. I enrolled in community college to study finance. Turns out your path inspired me more than I admitted. Hope one day I'll be worthy to sit at that table you built. I read the message again and again, then typed a simple reply. This table doesn't need worthiness, only the honest desire to sit down. I slipped the phone away and poured lemonade for a woman holding a baby. She was new, recently out of a marriage where her husband controlled both her credit cards and social media accounts. Last week, she came to my class with doubt in her eyes. Today, she laughed more, enough for me to know she hadn't forgotten how to trust herself. As the sunset touched the maple canopy above, I pulled an old leather notebook from the kitchen drawer, my journal, not to recount, but to remember that I hadn't given up. Underneath, I wrote, "A table long enough can heal more than any overdue apology." Maple ran through the yard with the children. Elijah was adjusting string lights in the garden. My grandfather sat at the corner of the table, his hand resting gently on Grandma's photo, his eyes far away, as if speaking to someone only he could hear. I walked into the kitchen to make more coffee. When I opened the back door, the glow from the porch light filtered through the sheer curtain. Exactly like the light on the day I opened the first lawsuit letter, but this time the feeling was entirely different. No glass breaking, no heart falling, just the smell of baked goods, the sound of children's laughter, and the soft tapping of fingers on wood as someone waited for the main course. I looked around and smiled, not because I finally had the family I once wished for, but because I had learned to tell the difference between those who choose to stand beside me and the things that no longer belong to me. As I returned to the old wooden table, hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea still holding the dusk's chill, I thought, how many of us have been hurt by those we called family? How many stayed silent, thinking if we endured just a little longer, it would all get better? I don't tell this story for sympathy. I tell it because I believe that truth, once spoken, has more healing power than we think. If you've ever had to choose between loyalty to your family and respect for yourself, you're not alone. I hope you'll share how you feel after hearing this story. Because maybe your words will be the first light for someone still searching in the dark. And if you're drawn to journeys of healing after heartbreak, to families full of tension but also chances, to understand, to let go, and to grow, please follow this channel. There are so many true stories ahead about family, love, and the courage it takes to begin again. Thank you for listening. And if you can, leave a comment. I always read, and I always listen.